Hey, good evening, guys. Welcome back to another episode of BINSPIRED TV. I got a special guest here on the line. Her name is Tiana Burse. She's an entrepreneur, social media consultant, and she's just winning in everything she touches. Man, they turn to gold. So I got her on here to come on here and just give her some tips and share her story to inspire us and get your week started with something on a positive note. All right, guys? So let's hear a little bit from Tiana. Tiana, share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm not really self-made. I'm more team-made. I'm more mentor-made. But I will say that I am young enough to know what I'm good at and young enough to know what I'm bad at. I'm very self-aware and I really bank on a lot of my strengths, and I partner with a lot of people who are my strength where I'm weak. But just to make a long story short, I'm just one of those people that at 20, 21, 22 years old, I was flat broke, filed bankruptcy, and found a good person, a good mentor to see more in me than what I saw in myself when it comes to business. Kind of learned the ropes of the traditional home-based business, built that up to 4,000 person organization in 18 months. This is pre-social media, so if you can imagine how many no's I had to get, which is why I don't give a shit if someone tells me no now. And, with that happening, I learned basic human behavior, and I started to study the psychology of people. And then when Facebook and social media came about, I realized that there's really not a difference between human behavior and social media. It was just putting a bunch of people on social media that had the same behaviors that I had been accustomed to with, getting tens of thousands of no's. And so I really was able to market in the era that we lived in from there, made a shift where I no longer did the home-based business thing and was, I think, strong enough to build a business myself. And right now I can confidently say that our company is growing. I'm the CEO of a couple different entities, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Congratulations on being the CEO. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right. So, quick question. What are some of those sticky notes that you got behind of your bed? Or are they some of your motivation?
I believe in affirmation. I think that the word I am, I think that most people have, I think what I read once was that we have 50,000 thoughts a day. And let me be clear, I've read over 684 books over the last 11 years. So I've read a lot and I remember some and forget others, but I do remember something along the lines of that we have almost 50,000 thoughts a day, and majority of our thoughts are not positive, but more of negative and more of lack and more of what our problems are versus what we have to be grateful for. And for me, I've trained my mind. I believe in the power of the mind. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I'm a big Yoda fan and Obi-Wan Kenobi fan, where they let Luke Skywalker know that your mind can trick you into being something that you didn't quite see in yourself over time. So for me personally, I like to say the word I am a lot. So if I'm on the treadmill or I'm in the shower or I'm sitting here working, it's just friendly reminders of who I am. I am wealthy mentally, spiritually, and financially. And a lot of them in the back there has specific goals. It may be I have impacted over 1 million people on social media by December 31st, 2016. So they're very specific, while at the same time being very affirming. And so that's what those are back there. And honestly, I should probably redo them because half of them have happened the last 12 months.
And it's important, they say, you have to write your plans and goals down, because once you write it down, it'll manifest itself faster versus saying, I want to do this by this time, but you don't have it written down, so you can't see it every day, visualize it, and make it happen, So
100%. I think my greatest, I take time to even meditate every day. If I don't go into a meditative state, if I miss 2 days of meditating, I can feel that I've lost my vision. And for me, I believe that, and I'm an avid reader. So, I think that thoughts are things, and as a man or woman think it, so is she. So if I meditate and I can feel and see myself at the end result, whether it's 6 months from now, a week from now, or a year from now, then I'm actually able to tap into that feeling, and that feeling then manifest what the vision is. And I think people don't really understand that, but that's the depth of law of attraction. So Yeah, I believe in what you're saying. I mean, if you can feel it, affirm it, and see it, and you have it written down, and like, listen, like I don't have like all these specific goals, but I see it in the mind, and if I can see it in my mind, then I know I can hold it in my hand.
Right. And I know you mentioned reading a whole bunch of books. What are some good ones that you would recommend to some people who are watching?
Yeah, I'm a big mindset person. I like I'm a Jedi. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but I believe in a lot of mindset books. So one of the biggest books that I've read 5 times now is James Allen. He's the author, and the book is As a Man Thinketh, and which is powerful. I'm also an Ogmandino. I'm a huge fan of his. So I've read all of his books, The Gift, The Greatest Salesman in the World. I think it's The Gift of Akbar or something like that. But I have all of his books. I really I love his style of writing. I love the vision that he has, and it's kind of helped me. And the third one that I think changed my life was a book called, and this is interesting, it's by Dr. Spencer, and I forgot his last name, but it's called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's about this big, and it almost looks like it's a child's book, but there's so much power in what he wrote that it teaches self-awareness and to be self-aware of what's going on around you, because we can ignore signs. And if you ignore signs that are saying you should not be doing this, you have loss and you have all these things that happen that are negative. So it's being very self-aware. So I would say those 3 books.
I definitely, now that you say that, I definitely have to get that one because it was something that happened recently where I posted about it. We never pay attention to the little signs, but we always get upset when we get the results of the signs we didn't pay attention to.
Yes.
I definitely gotta get it.
You're gonna love that book. That book is it's like 3 different mice, and they're in this maze, and in like every maze they go through, at the end of the maze, there's always that block of cheese, and they never notice that the block of cheese got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's just such a deep, prolific way to like put child's imagination to reality as a business owner, as a person who is just living in this life. And so it's something that you'll love that book. That book is amazing.
I'm definitely gonna get it. But let's see. So what was your biggest motivation in becoming an entrepreneur?
My biggest motivation was the fact that I knew that something had to happen for me when I went to college for 3 months and I was bored. I speak at universities and I think that it's amazing, but for me, I don't have like AD. There's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't have any type of like attention deficit. What I did have was I knew there was an inner knowing that my skills, even though I wasn't self-aware of what they were at that time, I felt deep down inside that there was something greater for me. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how it was going to come into my life, but I also had the inner knowing that something else was meant for me. And call it being self-aware without having the knowing, and most maybe ignore that inner knowing, but I didn't, I couldn't, and I knew that I was very unhappy. So I think for me, it was this innate ability to know that there was something else out there. And when I found out what it was and I was able to get involved as an entrepreneur, that we all have our addictions, I would say. And so the addiction for me was knowing that this is what I was supposed to be on this earth to do, and that I wasn't going to stop going after what I wanted to do with my life. I would get rich or die trying. And I use the word rich loosely because I'm into, depth, not like width. But I think for me, it was an inner knowing that once I got in alignment with what I felt like my path was supposed to be, it felt so right and so good that I knew that I had to ride this thing out, because I couldn't ignore the fact that it made me feel the way it made me feel on the inside.
Interesting. And like what you said, it feels like it just flows, because sometimes we end up knocking on doors that we are not supposed to go through, and we're like the fish swimming against the current trying to get it to work. But as soon as you hit that place where you actually belong, it's like everything, like you turn around and you swim with the current. You know what I'm saying? So that's very important.
No, yeah. When you actually, it's interesting. I'll use this example. You know, in my 20s, I got into the home-based industry, and I rode that wave out. And some things happened where I made, you know, a six-figure income, built an incredible team pre-Facebook, and then I lost the entire organization. So I was left with zero. And it took me a couple years of struggle to get back on my feet. And it's interesting is like when you get back, when you start to, because you may not know what you're supposed to be doing, right? You may have a natural at something, and that something will get you from here to here, but then to go from here all the way up here, it's going to be something totally different. And you don't know where that's going to come from. But when you get from here to here, that's when you swim with the current. And you start to get in massive flow, and your vibrations are at an all-time high, and you start looking left and right, and you start, you know, building this big, huge company that you're like, where was this at the entire time? But the truth is that you had to go through here, learn, and then get here, and then loss, and then ride that loss out, and then discover a higher kind of consciousness. Then you go from here to here. So I think, you know, you're spot on, because for me, I'm in such a current that in my head, I'm like, this is what I was supposed to be doing from the beginning, you know, but it took going through ups and downs to get to this point.
And honestly, it'll take those ups and downs some people figure it out easier. Some people have to go through the struggle to figure it out on their own, you know, because not everybody wants to be saved or helped. Some people just need to like figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
All right. So how important is you're an entrepreneur, you're CEO of your own company and multiple entities. So how important is having the right environment for you?
You know, it's interesting. I've been blessed to have an environment where I've had supporters. I've had the best mentor on the planet. And even in the midst of having the best support system and the best mentor, I've also found myself in the most darkest moments of my life. I think that having the right environment the physical environment isn't as important as having the right people around you. And so I would safe to say that I would go from saying that, you know, is it right to have the right environment, which, you know, Oprah was from such, and Tyler Perry, lived in and grew up in such a bad environment and endured so much physical abuse that their environment didn't necessarily dictate where they're at today. I think it's safe to say that your environment physically, like where you live, isn't as important as the environment that you have around you as far as people, human beings. And I think that was the one thing that would make or break my career and my success. I mean, my company will do over $400,000 this year, which is crazy. And I have a great team with me. And it wasn't even about me being raised in Napa around people who had money, because I was still broke. It was more people who saw more in me than what I saw in myself. And then I was able to be smart enough to distance myself from those who weren't making their lives better and position myself with those who saw more in me, because I knew that if I surrounded myself with people who were at a higher level than I was, and it took a while for me to find that, so it's not going to happen overnight, but that environment allowed me to raise my level of consciousness, my level of knowledge base, which ultimately gave me permission to take action to have more. And so I think the people that you surround yourself with is far more important than the environment that you're raised in. And I've had this discussion a couple of times with people, you know, there's, you know, for me, you know, when I didn't have a laptop, there was a library that had a laptop. So I think it's utilizing your environment to basically build what you can, but also position yourself around people who are going places and not those who are dragging you down. I quoted today that if you have a goal in your mind or a dream in your head, and you tell someone your goal and your dream and they shoot it down, that's your fault for telling your goal to the wrong person. So I think it's really aligning yourself with those who can bring you up and pull you up, and not those who are either at the same capacity as you or bringing you down.
That's very important. I like the way how you explain it, because sometimes we tend to be oblivious to the people who are not actually there to support us. and think, oh, maybe one day they're gonna jump on board or think, and we just let them hang around. But in all actuality, we gotta move around and get around the actual people who are gonna help us get to where we wanna be.
100%. And you don't know what that's like until you either ask for it, number one, because I asked for it when I was broke and 23 years old. I didn't ask for money out of the sky. I didn't ask for God to send me a check. I said, God, if you just give me the right opportunity and then send someone who can help me achieve that, I'll take advantage of it without knowing what I was asking for. But the key was that when it came in front of me 3 weeks later, I was self-aware enough to know that I asked for it, it was here, and it was my job to take action on it. And I did that. And maybe I'm the fortunate few, but I don't think I am. I think that I think that if you believe that there's a higher being, which I do, and you ask for a blessing, it's not going to come in what you may perceive it to come. It might come in the form of an idea, a mentor, or something of that nature. And so I was very much aware enough to know that, okay, this could be it. And I wasn't shy about seeing if it was. And it turned out it was. So that's kind of what I believe, and only because I've lived it.
Right. So, who was one of the most influential persons in your life on your journey through entrepreneurship?
I would say there's a gentleman named Michael, and he was my first mentor, and he still is my mentor. And he's been my mentor for going on 12 years now. And when I first met him, he was generating a 7-figure income in his consulting firm, but he was also on the verge of generating a 6-figure income really passively in a home-based business. And so I wanted to know how to either accomplish one or the other or both. At that time, I walked in with very little, I think I had no money. So I walked in with an openness to learn and then to basically, I would say, participate in my own rescue. And so if he allowed me to participate in what he was doing and taught me what I could do to help myself, I was going to participate in that rescue. And, I think when you spend time with someone at the capacity that I spent time with him, and when someone makes a 7-figure income, it's not accidental. They're very knowledgeable, and their knowledge base is so incredible that their language isn't the same, their walk isn't the same, their talk isn't the same, and you start to develop that same habit in yourself if you are able to surround yourself with someone like that. And that's been the biggest influencer. The drive is a different story, right? Just because I have the knowledge doesn't mean that the drive is the same. Once I learned the content and the knowledge, and I still do, the drive then is my mom and my dad and my niece and my nephew and my brother. So the drive then becomes the family, but the content and knowledge is the mentor.
And how did you actually end up meeting him? What led to you meeting him and seeking him out?
Yeah, I was really flat broke, and I remember going into my closet at the time, and I just got on my knees and I said, God, I need an answer. I need a solution. If you give me an opportunity and help me exploit my strengths, I promise you I'll take advantage of it. And 3 weeks later, I happened to meet someone that was associated with him at that time. And I happened to be, I think, at Jamba Juice getting something to drink. And it was a gentleman who had a $125,000 car. And I said, listen, I said, I really like your car. I said, how do I get what you have? And for me at that time, I wasn't in depth. I was more width. So for me, a car to me was success when it's not. But at that time, I was so low with my level of knowledge and experience that when I saw him and his car was beautiful and it was, it was 150, I think it was like $125,000 car. I said, how do I get what you have? And how do I do what you do? And those are my exact 2 words. And he said, meet me at this location today at 2:00. I want to introduce you to someone that I'm associated with. And he showed me the steps to become wealthy. And I'm sure if you're hungry enough, he's going to show you. And that's how, and I didn't know where I was going. I was familiar with the area, didn't know the exact location. Obviously, I had enough discernment to know that I wasn't going to some like sketchy situation. But, I definitely went there with an open mind. And, I was very naive. The first question that he asked me was, have you heard of Robert Kiyosaki? And for those who know who he is now, he wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and with Donald Trump, Why I Want You to Be Rich, and all these other things. And he has these seminars. And at that time, I had such low level of knowledge that I was like, I made a joke of it because I didn't know, when you're insecure about who you are on some levels of knowledge, because I didn't know anything. I'm like, oh, who was that? Like the guy who owns a liquor store up the street? Like I thought he was like a liquor store owner, and this is Robert Kiyosaki, the Robert Kiyosaki. So, my knowledge was very low. And, he laughed it off, which was amazing. But, at that time, I just literally said, if you can teach me something that can get me out of my situation that I'm in, I definitely am a student of the craft. And if I like it, I'll continue to do it. And so from that point on, the next day, it was like day in, day out, he was coaching, teaching, educating. So that's really how I met him. And that's why I said I was so much my self-awareness was so high that when I saw someone who looked the part, I asked how I can play the part. And then I said, and then when he said, meet me here to learn the part, I acted upon that and then showed up to learn the part, if that makes sense.
Right. It does. And not only did you ask for it and receive it, but you also took action.
That is true.
Sometimes we get in a place where we get information, we get all the information, but we never take action on things. But you were in a position where you got what you asked for and you took action upon it. That's great. Like that. When you was talking about your story, it reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen it, probably you have. What's that movie called? Where the guy says, if you show me a check of $70,000 or something, I'll quit my job right now. Oh, Wolf on Wall Street.
Wolf on Wall Street. Yep.
That's what you reminded me of right there. I was like, wow, interesting.
Yeah, I look back on it now, and I don't think it was normal, but I also was so ready. And I think that's such an internal lesson to know. And if I can give a lesson to everyone, you might have to be ready for that moment, because I've seen many people ask, and then when the moment comes, they say no, and they turn it down. And it can come in many forms, and you don't know what that form is. And so some of it might be risk of learning or risk of knowing, but I think that you have to be ready. And I was so ready. I was in such a bad situation, and it wasn't like I met this person and then I just flourished and everything happened. My journey was ass backwards, to be honest with you. So for me, what I did was I really made it. I learned. I made it happen. I mean, I was making $17,000 a month in my 20s. And then I lost everything. So my journey wasn't like the story of struggle. It was like, no, I killed it and then lost it. And then that was the test to see if I was really who I thought I was. And now this year, the company's exploding on many fronts, many of the companies that I run.
So you're successful in everything. So people will look at you and be like, became successful overnight, or they may be like, they may ask you, what's the secret? And what would you tell someone that comes at you that way?
The secret is hustle. And do you have what it takes? I don't think that my story is easy. When you build a company and you think it's yours and then you lose it and you realize it's not, and you're back to the drawing board and you have 1 month until your lease is up in your apartment, and then you're in your late 20s, and you have to move back in with your mom or parents. I mean, that's a humbling experience when you had just, been on your feet since you were, once you started making it and never looked back for 7 years. So I think that, I think people misunderstand the journey, and I think that's why there's such a misconception. And they can look at someone and say, oh, you made it happen and you're overnight. And what most don't understand is that overnight success takes time. And I'm just now at this stage of my life seeing the fruits of my labor of struggle the last couple years. The difference is that I never quit. I found enough people to pay me bullshit pennies for what I love doing. And then I ended up building an audience on social media, and then got a chance to get paid what I was worth, and then built a company around it. And now I teach it to others, which is a spin-off of everything else that I'm doing. So I think that overnight success takes time, but you also have to be willing to lose some stuff. You have to be willing to know that, like, you're never going to win everything, that you're losing is a part of being an entrepreneur. And most people that I'm around, they can't handle the climb, and they can't handle the loss. And so they may look at me and say, you're so calm and poised. But remember, I've read over 680 books the last 11 years, which developed the mindset of a champion to know that when I was losing, that it was just temporary. And so I did have to borrow money to be able to sustain. I did have to go ask for help. I wasn't shy about knowing that it was just temporary, but that's an inner knowing that I had as an entrepreneur, knowing that if I'm asking for help, it's going to be paid back because I'm not going to quit. And so call me special, or call me just the unwillingness to kill my dreams. I don't know. But I say that I just had this inner knowing that I was going to build something and build it huge, or this physical life would end and I would die trying. And that was it.
I like that. And you just have to have, like, on the journey of entrepreneurship, you have to have that mindset. It's either this or ain't nothing else gonna happen. Because if you have, like, outer opportunities or other stuff you're focused on, you're not gonna give your 100%. Oh, I got a job, so I'm not gonna give 100%. I'll just go back to my job, you know? But once you have that mindset of it's this or nothing else, like it's this or everything is gone, like you're gonna hustle harder. You have that inner motivation of like, yes, I'm gonna make it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when people are at the club, you're working. You know, like when people are like on trips, you're not on trips, you're working. It's like you're sacrificing so that you can have a big payday later. You know, even at the momentum stage that I have right now, I think that balance is important. You know, I literally, I was 2 weeks ago, I was in LA visiting my niece. My phone was with me, obviously for emergencies. I had my phone with me, but, for me, I was, disconnected on some levels and spent the entire weekend with my niece. And that was just 2 weeks ago. I'm already thinking about going to see her, not this weekend, but next weekend, because we have birthday parties for my family. But next weekend, going back to LA to see her, just to enjoy the fruits of the labor that I hadn't had a chance to enjoy for many years. So I think that as an entrepreneur, I think that people, number one, when they start to get momentum, they don't have the balance because they fear that the momentum will lose and that they'll no longer have what they have because they had been struggling for so long. On the flip side of that, they end up not having any balance because they had been struggling for so long. So they feel like they can't stop until they're at a certain level of income or success level. And the sick part about that is that they'll always be on this journey and never enjoy it. For me, I've been able to develop enough mental, and I think a part of that is living in your means. I think that's a huge part too. It's like, I don't live beyond my means. I may have made, a substantial amount of money the past 2 months, but I'm still rocking like holy t-shirts. Like I think that there's a misconception of like success isn't what you think it is. Like I don't have a Rolex watch anymore. Like I live a simple life so I can enjoy memories that I can make with the money I make, not build a company to enjoy the physical things that most people think makes you as a person. That's not depth. I think that most people underestimate living within your means, not having to impress people when you actually have money, and at the same time knowing that if you're happy and satisfied with you and you can build this and your driving force isn't recognition or ego, but more of memories with your family, then you won't care about this or the why. You'll care about who you make memories with and not worry about anything else.
That's very important too, because like just today I was at the pool and I was just like, I need to leave my phone in here. I don't need to answer the phone or anything like that. You just need that moment to yourself to like just get everything together, and just disconnect from life itself and just enjoy, be present in the moment, whatever it is. Maybe a walk in nature or a walk in your park. For you, is you're hanging out with your niece or your family, and you just need those moments where we disconnect from people, from technology and get your life together, So
yeah.
That's very good. That's part of being balanced, and it keeps you going in the hard times,
Yeah, because you're reminded of why you're doing what you're doing for. right? If I didn't have the mission or passion to go buy a $1.2 million house in LA, not for the house, because paying $4,000 for rent is wasting money, and you should buy a house that, you know, if that's what you're going to cost, and if that's what it's going to cost you to buy a house, then you should own versus rent. If there wasn't a drive to make that happen, then why am I doing what I'm doing? I might as well go out and get a regular job and be a regular person. But I think it's just reminding yourself of why you're doing this. You know, and again, you have different levels. You have like the legacy level, you have the ego level, you have the recognition level, and you have the level. I'm gonna tell you a story. This is the level that I'm on. I'm from Napa. Just so you know, for those that I'm from Napa, I don't live there now, but I'm from Napa. And no, not the wealthy part, the very humble part where I was almost like an outcast because my parents didn't own a winery. That was generational. And my mom or dad wasn't an attorney. My dad worked for the city and my mom had a daycare. And so, you know, it was very humble, 1,400 square foot house we lived in, 3 bedrooms. It wasn't a Napa story. And I remember going to Napa recently to do business with some people. And there's this guy that pulled up in a Bentley, and he was a young cat. And I was like, wow. To one of my friends, I was like, wow. I was like, you know, what does he do? And the person said, oh, he does real estate. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, my friend did. And then he said, but I'm going to give you an even better story. And I said, what? Because he knows that I'm always about storytelling. And I said, what? And he said, do you see that guy right there with the holy shirt on? I said, yeah. He said, do you see that car he came out of? I said, yeah. He said, he owns a winery. That changed my mindset. That changed. Because the one who had the holy shirt, who owned a winery, wasn't driving a Bentley. And not because the winery was struggling, it's because he lived in depth of who he was and why he was doing what he was doing and what he built, and not with look at me, I'm an ego.
Like, I like that. And we get so caught up in, oh, we need the physical things like cars, whatever, watches, whatever, jewelry, whatever it is. But it's mainly about who we're impacting and our why. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I was there though. I was that person that when I was in my 20s, I had a $13,000 Rolex watch that was diamond encrusted on. It was a presidential one woman's. It was diamond encrusted on the bezel, and then the whole band was diamond encrusted. It cost me $13,000 wholesale because we have a great guy out in SAC, and I had this BMW 650 that cost me a ton of money. I put $20,000 a down payment on, and I look back on it now because I hadn't lost anything, right? I may have been broke, but I hadn't lost. And there's a difference. You can be broke and rise and not lose. And so because I hadn't lost, I spent in like superficial behaviorism, I call it, like behaviorism. And then when I lost, it made me go deeper. And I think that I feel like I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And so when you can go deep, you try to get as close to the spiritual being that you are before you transition into the spiritual being that you become when you leave this physical body. And so I think when you lose and lose and lose on a financial level, and then you lose on an emotional level, it forces you to kind of really understand the power of physical life versus superficial.
All right. So we talked about a few things on here, and I got a few more questions for you. I ain't gonna keep you too long. But one of the things I wanna ask is, what are some of the most challenging obstacles? I know you've had a few, you've talked about a few already, but what has been one of the most challenging things that you had to go through as an entrepreneur?
I think number one was losing my first business that I had built, thinking that it was mine, and it wasn't. It was a home-based business. And so I was, you're taught to believe that it's your company and that's your business, but in actuality, on some deep levels, it's not. So it can be taken away from you at any given moment. And that was the first kind of hit hard, like, moment where I was like, you cry and you don't know what's going on. I think the second deepest moment was having an emotional situation happen to me where the person didn't die, but it felt like the person died. And so they were taken away from you. In that moment, I died spiritually. Part of my soul died, and it took me about 3 months to recover, to finally understand what was going on. And I think it's those two things. There hasn't been a third one. Maybe the third one happened recently, then I can say this. Maybe the third one happened recently when I put my trust into a silent business partner who went completely rogue, and I didn't notice the signs that I know now, because he was befriending me, and I was like, oh my God, hey, and it was very much like we were the same friends and all that stuff. And then the next day he went rogue and kind of did something that was very it was bad and I was left to pick up the pieces. So I think those are the three things, and they all taught me three different lessons, which number one is own your own shit. You know, you can leverage whatever you need to leverage to build something great, but turn that into your own company financially. The second thing is that when something traumatic happens to you, a piece of you only dies to rebirth a stronger self. And that stronger self forces you to handle the next phase of your life that you don't know what that looks like. But in my experience, it has been greater mentally and emotionally and financially. So don't be afraid to lose, because you'll gain without knowing that you'll gain. And the third thing is that when someone is rowing your boat as a company, as a partner, be very self-aware that they may be in the back of you drilling holes without you knowing. And if the signs show it, but then they act a different way, like it's normal, but then they show different signs, then just be very self-aware that it's time to cut them out of your circle, because one person can bring down an entire organization and take you with them. And so I think those are the three lessons and the three things that I've learned. As I'm 34, so I'm sure I'll encounter more, but thus far, that's what's happened. So.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. All right. So I know you have your speaking, your consulting, but I know you have Bar Talk on Coffee. What was the thing that, where did you got the idea from? What happened that gave you that idea?
Ooh, okay. Okay, so, you know, when the second thing what you just asked me the question of, the second thing that I mentioned, when that happened, I found comfort and solace in a couple people, and one of them was my cousin, who to this day is just like my sister. She's just so incredible. And we would go to the bar, like we would call it Turn Up Tuesdays, and we would go to the bar, and I think she's almost 12 years younger than me. So she's in her 20s and I'm in my 30s. We would go to the bar every week, and we would just like drink and have a good time, and, you know, and have like a mental break for me from a business standpoint. And I would just say the most funniest, but the most honest things to her. And she, you know, she's on Facebook. She's like, why don't you share this part of you to the world? Like, you don't share anything like who you really, like your business, but like, you're so funny and you're so honest, and you're so, you know, candid with your dialogue. And I'm like, well, I want to, you know, but I don't know what I would call it. And then, so we kind of came up with like, she's like, call it Bar Talk. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't be drinking at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd be like an alcoholic. And so she's like, well, we'll think about it. So something happened one day where somebody said something to me and they shit on my dreams. And I'm like, why would you shit on my dreams? And so I came home one day. It's just funny. I came home one day. So the Bar Talk was already planted in my mind, right? So what you can see in your mind, you can hold in your hand. And so when I came home from that person who I felt had not been the most supportive as they should have been, I came home and I was so angry, and my anger fueled this whole movement. And I said, I put out my phone, my cell phone, and I put it in front of my laptop, and I said, welcome to Bar Talk and Coffee. And that kind of translated into, we're going to have honest, candid dialogue over a cup of coffee. So that way it kind of covered both elements. And when I did that, the first video got like 300 views. The second one got like, I think 1,500. But, and you fast forward now, I launched it August 16th, 2015. And so we're in we're May 1st, 2016, you know, my videos do, you know, 20,000 per video per week. And so that was the motivation. And so for me as a business owner, you know, if you're impacting people and giving your time and your knowledge, time is money. And I learned that. And, you know, Donald Trump, you know, as off the rocker as he could be at times, he had given Mike Tyson advice for 5 minutes, and he got an invoice. Mike Tyson got an invoice for $1 million, and it went to the judge and everything else. And Donald Trump ended up getting $1 million from Mike Tyson because his 5 minutes of conversation and advice was worth $1 million. That's just what his business standard was. And so he understood what his time was. And so for me to be able to monetize everything, we launched Bar Talk Apparel, which is done. It's incredible. We're on our summer line right now, our summer collection right now. And we almost sold out the entire first launch of it. Wow. Which launched really in January of this year. So it's been an incredible journey. But I think more importantly, what I think I've realized is that people want honesty and transparency sells, and they want support and they want a community. And I think what I brought, and I still bring every week, is like, I'm going to bring you real talk and real shit. And either you love it or you don't. And those who don't love it, I'm not for you. I don't please everybody. I don't really care to. But if I am for you, I'm going to provide you with the safe haven and the honesty that's going to make you feel good about what you're doing, because we all endure the same things. It's how we respond to it that matters versus react. And most people may not have the support system or the mindset. And I'm here to like be that reminder that, hey, I've gone through what you're gone through, or I'm going through at the time. And here's how I'm going to respond to it. And if you can do the same thing, I'm going to go on this journey with you.
And I like how real and authentic you are, because people could feel that. Like I was about to write a post earlier in the week, and I said like it's okay to like post quotes and stuff, positive quotes, but it's a different thing when you post it and you live through it, or you live through it, because people feel that, you know what I'm saying? People could feel like when you're speaking from your heart or just pouring your heart out for them. You know, so that's very important.
Yeah, I mean, like on the internet, there's so much noise, and there's so many people who say you know, especially like sponsored ads and visual prettiness, and people who are just so superficial on the outside, and they get so caught up on like, I want to make sure that like people see my brand and visually it makes sense and it's so pretty without having the substance and the content. It's very easy to read a book or listen to YouTube videos of Les Brown and other people and then say, oh, I can speak about this without living it. I'm living it and or lived it. And I think that's been and I teach this to my clients. I'm like, if you don't live it, don't fucking say it, because you're going to be out there with the white noise of everyone else, and no one's going to take you seriously. And plus, if someone believes you because of your visual aspect and your fucking quotes, the problem with that is that you're not going to be able to help them when they're really in a bad situation. I mean, that's why I don't give a fuck if you're 14 years old and you call yourself a life coach and people are caught up in that because you're speaking a language that is regurgitated. I find it bullshit, because I'm living stuff. And if I came to a number of people, if not millions, who call themselves life coaches and branding specialists, and I said, listen, this just happened to me. I just lost an entire company. What can I do? And you don't have an answer for me because you haven't lived it, then you're fucking stupid. And so for me, I think that people on the internet who are not living the challenges, but yet they're teaching a solution without really teaching the strategy, I have a problem with. And I won't go out there and be like, you're stupid and you're whack and whatever, because we're superficial human beings. Most people are. And so they get caught up in seeing someone's visual and saying, I want to follow them. But there's no substance. And that's the problem, is that there's so much white noise everywhere that it's like, find someone who's really been there and who will tell it like it is. Right. And then follow them and let them guide you, because if they lost, it wasn't because they didn't make it. It's because they're living the journey of a billionaire or a millionaire. And there's such a misconception with that. I don't pray for bad on anyone, but for those who have packaged their products and their content pretty on social media and have made a 6-figure income, I want them to experience loss, so that way they can really find self and then teach self and go on a larger scale. I do.
And it's funny you say that, because like before when I started doing videos, like I was just doing it for like signups and stuff. And like I would get like 1 or 2 views. And then as soon as my mindset changed, and like I didn't care no more about the signups, like, because I'm no longer in the company or whatever. But once I changed my mindset, and like it was just to speak from my heart and share stories that I've experienced that could possibly help other people get through, like I saw a total difference. Like the first video that I post like when I came back was something about being present in the moment, because we get caught up in the distractions of the past or like thinking about the future too much. And that first video, it was like a humbling experience because I never experienced that much like likes or like engagement from being making videos. And it's a whole different level once you become yourself and become authentic and share your story from your heart. So I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, transparency sells, right? Like it just does.
So I got one more question for you, and I'm gonna let you go. But what are some things? What are some tips, 2 or 3 tips that you can give our viewers on whether they want to be in business or just life tips or anything that you can give to someone who's on their journey to become a successful entrepreneur?
I mean, the first tip that I would say is you find a mentor. And I know I say it like everyone says that, but I think just if you can't find a mentor, then go to different networking events, connect with people on social media. Social media has made it bigger and better and easier now than ever to connect with someone who you admire. And then ask them for 15 minutes of their time. And if they don't respond, there's 1,000 more like them that you have to kind of dig deep and find. And there's one that will say yes, because for me, you know, if they're a true entrepreneur, they're not going to ignore the one person or 5,000 people who have 100 or 400 followers, because that's huge. Most people are not willing to give back and put time into the 15 followers that someone else has, or the 1 view or 5 views. And that's where they become disconnected from reality. And I once read, and I've always learned this, man, I was 23 years old and I learned this. And that was the first lesson that I kept with me in my heart. And I'm 34 now. So I learned 11 years later, literally, that the quote that was in my head was, if you forget where you come from, chances are you're headed right back there. So if you neglect giving the time to the person who's reaching out to you to give a piece of your time, everybody has time. When I hear someone say, I don't have the time, you are delusional. That means that you actually have the time, you just lack time management. And so I think that the first thing is that get with a community or group, find networking events, get in certain groups on social media that will help you, ask for help, all of those things. If you need more hands-on, reach out to the 1,000, 2,000 people that are successful or looking like this. I mean, you can test it out. I mean, but reach out to those who you admire and see who's going to respond, and just get 15 minutes of their time. The second thing is that you have to actually learn and know if you're made for this. You may not be made to be an entrepreneur. I'm not going to like discourage anyone, but some people are just not made for full-time entrepreneurship, because a full-time entrepreneur is willing to live with their mom and admit it and say, when I was broke, I moved in with my mom. I live in her basement. I'm eating top ramen, but let me tell you something, I'm going to make it. That's a true bred entrepreneur. A true bred entrepreneur is the one who's going to live with 4 or 5 roommates and sleep on a couch eating shit, knowing that they're going to make it. So you have to ask yourself if you're willing to put that sacrifice in as a true bred. And if you're not, there is nothing wrong with that. Get a job and then be an entrepreneur part-time or spare time, and then see where that leads you. Because you may not be made for the full-time thing, because it's going to require loss and sacrifice and a lot of pain. And the third thing is, know what the process actually looks like. We as media and society tend to highlight success stories without highlighting the pain. I wish, and I mean, I write for the newspaper, and that's not my genre of writing, but if that was my genre of writing, I would highlight stories of people who had more pain than pleasure when it comes to succeeding, because I think that we highlight all of these really glitz and glamorous kind of situations, but yet we don't highlight how long it took them to get there. You know, that's why people think that success is overnight. No, it's not overnight. I mean, it may seem like it didn't happen last night, but overnight success takes a massive amount of time. It's interesting. I'll tell you this quick story. And I was at my brother's art show last night, and I was talking to some friends of mine that was there, and all of a sudden this lady like looks at me and she's like, and this was weird to me because I don't at all in my mind, I'm like, where the fuck did this come from? Like, I didn't even know where it came from. I don't believe it. I don't see it. I don't recognize it. It's not my thing. But she goes, how does it feel to be famous? Right? And I said, what did you just say to me? She goes, how's it feel to be famous? And I'm like, I don't know who you're talking to, but I'm Tiana Burse. I'm not famous. I don't know. And then the girl talking to her was like, everyone knows that you're a social media celebrity. You're famous. And I'm like, I'm not. I don't know. And then my friend, I was like, can you please tell them that my name is Tiana? Like, I was like blown away by what perception is. And my whole point of saying that is, don't get caught up in what other people say. Like, I was telling my mom, I'm like, you think Brad and Angelina go around saying I'm famous? No, they're going around saying I fucking adopt babies in third world countries. Like I help fund villages. Like that's what philanthropy is. So for me, it's like, I will say this, like, don't get caught up in what you think success is. Success isn't fame. Success is grind. Success is hustle. Success is reaching out to magazines and newspapers and people, letting them know what you're doing and then giving your time to them if they will accept it. Because, you know, success is giving back to people and finding out why you're really here and not being caught up on this or the Rolex or the house or the cars. It's getting to know you, self, and not being ego driven. So I think that that's the things that I would get your fucking mind right. Like, just be human. I mean, be human and less ego. Because for me, ego is edging God out. And I was once there, and I'll never be back there again because I know where I came from, and I ain't going back there anytime soon. Right. So that would be my content, my ending info.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tiana. I appreciate it. And it's funny because, like, once you go through and you're an entrepreneur, you know there's no way you're going back there. So you do everything in your power, night and day, to make sure you make it so you don't go back there. Because going through that storm again is not a pretty sight. No matter what storm it was you went through, it's not pretty. So I commend you for that. So, Tiana, I want to just thank you for joining us, our show, Be Inspired TV. Thank you for being our guest. And if you missed this episode, I'm definitely going to post a replay. Always post it. Just go to BeinspiredTV.com to see the replay. And I just want to thank you. Tune in next week for our next episode. Got a special guest coming. You'll see during the week, all right? So thanks so much for logging on. Thanks so much for viewing. I'll catch you on the next episode. Tiana, you can stay on. I got to talk to you about a couple things, all right?
Okay.
All right. See you guys next week. Signing off. Inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. I'm going to see you next week. Peace.